Hey everyone, Spaceman Spiff here, bringing you another competitive deck tech. This time we're looking at Tomura's Shigaraki. I built this deck on Fire, and I'm used a combination of the Todoroki ranged package, as well as a defensive foundation package to make a pretty sweet control deck. I'm going to be going over these cards in packages to show how they all work together. If you need a written list because you can't decipher the 12 pixels that made it onto my poor graphic, I will be posting one in the description below. Without further ado, here's Tomura Shigaraki. So let's start by just going over the character real quick. Shigaraki is a 6 hand size, 28 health character, and he has 2 responses. The first, once per turn after your non-throw attack deals damage, your rival loses 5 health. And the second, response commit, after you completely block an attack, your rival destroys 1 ready foundation. Shigaraki has a really unique playstyle. He gets a ton of value from poking and punishes your opponent for poking. He can be very disruptive, and it will take a lot of time for some characters to build the foundations they need to get through your defenses. Shigaraki really hits a power spike around the turns 3 to 4, where your opponent is still squeezed for foundations, and you can apply maximum pressure. While this is a slower deck for sure, you really want to try and end the game within that window, as going too long usually means you won't have the resource advantage that you're used to having. This first group of cards is the strongest opening we can have with this deck. Monster Blast makes it so the next low attack you play blows up a foundation of your choice, and we have 2 excellent low attacks in Giant Ice Wall and Ice Storm. Both of these attacks make it hard to block, with Stun 2 on Giant Ice Wall, and Ice Storm being unable to be blocked by attacks. If you have the choice, try and lean towards Giant Ice Wall though, as Ice Storm does have additional benefits as a block on defense. This combo is really likely to get in for a quick hit, giving you that extra 5 damage off Shigaraki while blowing up one of their best foundations in the process. An important note here is that Monster Blast trigger happens as soon as the card is played, meaning you can blow up Specialist of Sound before they have the chance to respond with it. It just so happens that all the attacks on the previous slide happen to be ranged, so we get to sustain ourselves on the card draw from these 2 ranged attack build-arounds. Frigid Heatwave can hit for massive damage if the opponent doesn't block it for some reason, and on most turns also draws you 2 cards. Self-Assured is an amazing foundation, making it so we always have the right block zone for Shigaraki, as well as also giving us a burst of card draw when we need it. One of the most appealing aspects of this deck to me is that the power spike of the ranged attack package just so happens to hit around turns 3 to 4, where we have enough ranged attacks on our discard but haven't cycled yet. This lines up perfectly with Shigaraki's own natural power spike, meaning your cards are at their best at the same time your character is at his best. While this can really make for a powerful combo, you can basically lose the game as soon as you cycle, so really try to keep in mind your time limit on closing the game out. So not only are we blowing up foundations with Monster Blast, but we have a couple copies of Decaying Grip and a full play set of Evil Gaze in the deck as well. Decaying Grip is almost always used to block with, and remember that you get to order your responses so you can commit Shigaraki to blow up a foundation, then uncommit him with Decaying Grip, or vice versa. It's pretty flexible. Evil Gaze is an amazingly powerful and flexible card, as Speed Hate that blows up a foundation, or even an additional speed to force an attack through in a pinch. It is also a great block with Breaker 1, which is extra strong in our deck since our opponent will be short on resources already. It's important to remember that Evil Gaze triggers before Coordinated Effort has a chance to respond, making this an excellent counter to that card. So it turns out I've sort of buried the lead here, as this entire deck is actually built around In the Typhoon, the main reason we're a fire deck since Shigaraki only has 2 symbols. In the Typhoon is a foundation that can be removed from the game, you discard 2 cards, and your opponent's attack is considered fully blocked. This still triggers Shigaraki's response, and it works on every attack in the game except for Tape Swing and Flash attacks. Sneakily, this is actually one of our best offensive cards, as it lets us overextend without fear of dying on the crackback. At face value, this seems like an awful deal, but this deck draws so many cards we can't get rid of them fast enough, and this turns them into pure tempo. Precise Control can also sometimes trick your opponent into thinking you don't have the cards to use in the Typhoon, and then pops back into your hand at the last minute. It's a cute trick. This is the defensive package of our deck, and you'll notice a lot of overlap with our other packages, as many of these cards pull double duty. We have a decent amount of speed reduction, with Heroic Lineage, Evil Gaze, and sometimes Arrogant Disposition. Cool Student can also use Momentum to help pass blocks, and we don't really do much else with our Momentum, so might as well. One thing you'll notice here is that we have 4 cards with the Breaker ability, meaning we have 16 instances of Breaker in our deck. On turn 2, Evil Gaze blowing up a foundation while blocking with Ice Storm for Breaker 2 will stop literally any deck dead in their tracks. Nobody is attacking through that. Finally, we have our sideboard. Exploding Pride is a 4 of, as it actually fits really well in our deck, being a low-ranged attack. Basically, bring it in if your opponent uses momentum at all. You could argue that this could be main board, but Decaying Grip is just so good when it goes off. Plus Ultra comes in against decks with a lot of speed, though honestly it rarely does. There's just not a lot of great options for this sideboard that fit with our deck's game plan. Fulfilled My Duty is good against certain attacks like Reciprocal Burst that need multiple enhances to pop off. If you don't have any Plus Ultra, just use 2 more of these. And lastly, 2 more Decaying Grip in case you notice your opponent playing a glut of mid attacks, as this card really does punish those heavily. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed going through this deck with me. It's definitely one of the spiciest decks I've put together, and it gets hilarious reactions when it goes off. I'm going to be putting up some in-depth gameplay videos soon where I go through a whole game explaining my lines as I go, and I thought this might be a good deck to do that with, but let me know what you guys think. Would you like to see this deck in action or one of the others I've posted? Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.